Yeah, well, we'll get started. Well, good afternoon, and again, just an update from what we saw from this morning, as well as we took another flight at about 12 o'clock noon today. What we've been seeing over the last few days, and what's been consistent over the last 24 hours, is continued advancement of the flow off of the breakout that's upslope. It's about 0.3 miles from Apa'a Street at this time. The flow had advanced from yesterday morning to its current location this morning about 225 yards. So over the last 2 days, it's been fairly consistent at advancing approximately 200 yards per day. As I mentioned, it's about 0.3 miles from Apa'a Street, moving in a northeast direction. This is Apa'a Street right here, transfer station there. We still have active movement on the breakout that destroyed the residence on that property. It's advancing in a kind of a north-northwest direction across the driveway, moving parallel to Apa'a Street as well as parallel to Puhoi Village Road down here. So it's moving in this direction. We also have activity up adjacent to the transfer station. The flow had advanced around the back as well as down the side of the transfer station. There's a small access road here along the perimeter, and it actually penetrated the fence in several locations, and the flow was cascading down into the property along the fence line. You saw some of those pictures yesterday. So that was continuing this morning. The interesting part of that is all of the fingers or breakouts that have penetrated the fence and advanced downward and into the property have not moved once they hit the asphalt pad. They pretty much stall on the asphalt pad and haven't moved any closer to the structures. You know, a question was asked on the 11:30 brief, how close is it to any of the structures at the transfer station? It's still quite a distance because it's, again, hitting the pad and not advancing much at all. As I mentioned, the upslope breakouts, we're watching that very closely because it is advancing. It's advancing in a direction that could change the dynamics of the eruption as far as where the flow path could be, what might be downslope, what the track could be as far as the forecast for the future. But this is what it looks like up at the breakouts, looking downward towards the transfer station here. And you can see active burning along the edges, a very narrow finger here and another narrow finger here on that advancing breakout upslope. And again, just another picture from the opposite direction, looking up from Apa'a Street. Again, you can see that those two fingers are advancing in a northeast direction. This is the activity we're seeing around the transfer station. Helco's two poles are intact. They haven't been affected yet. They haven't been in any way encroached upon or impacted yet by the activity we're seeing around the transfer station. And what they were doing is applying Class A foam and water. So it's a firefighting foam that is used on ordinary combustibles, so wood, fabrics, papers, vegetation, etc. The purpose of that is the foam applied with the water breaks the surface tension on the water, allows the water to penetrate and soak into the ground better. So lessons learned from the previous pole that Helco had that was affected and eventually needed to be removed from the line is to try to saturate the ground around the pole and improve the fire resistive qualities of the protective barrier and to sustain the pole. So that's what they were doing, is applying foam and water. I believe they were doing both poles, a steel pole as well as the wood pole adjacent to it. And the reason why they were doing it today is with the approaching flow, if we didn't take advantage of the opportunity to get in there and do it, eventually if this came through, we wouldn't be able to stretch hose in or even lob the foam in or the water in from a distance. So again, it's a coordinated effort between Helco and the fire department in applying some of these mitigation strategies in advance to sustain the infrastructure. This burning here is what we see just around the cemetery location, just below the structure that was destroyed yesterday. That white square there is actually the water surface in the fish pond or reservoir that was affected earlier. Obviously, we're concerned with this particular path and track as it, we're watching it because of some of the critical infrastructure that's here. This is a corridor for one of Helco's main transmission lines. So if this was to advance, we have a possibility of affecting additional infrastructure here, as well as the water department's tank and well site. The water department is taking proactive steps today to secure this well site. What they're going to do is encapsulate or secure the well itself so that it'll be accessible in the future if the pad is anyway inundated by the lava flow. If they lose this particular well site or operation here, they already have contingency plans ready to move to ensure uninterrupted water service for the Puhoi community. So this will not result in any significant or catastrophic failure in providing water to the community. And again, this is what we saw at the transfer station. As I mentioned, when these breakouts come through the fence, they tend to hit the asphalt, and they've been stalling. This is the area that we're seeing advancement along the fence line as well as approaching Apaw Street, and with Helco's poles in close proximity, but again, not being affected at the current time. Again, a view of the structure that was lost. This is where the house was. This is the barn or garage building here. Still standing. No advancement beyond or up to the sidewalk, so that structure is still standing. The reservoir pond that you can see, a lobe or finger of lava that went into it. But again, very little burning or smoking activity along here. But we're still watching this for any breakouts in this particular area downslope. And again, that one very closely.